Hello dear viewers, a very warm welcome to our channel. It's very good to have you here. In today's video we are going to have a look at how to care for a disc brake. Disc brakes are standard on modern vehicles and require regular upkeep. In order to have prolonged service life and in order to run your vehicle safely, there are some things that you can do. Well, when you look at the operation of the disc brake, it's very easy. This disc, it is mounted to the wheel. Wheel will be mounted on these spokes, and then the wheel will be spinning. The rotor will be spinning with the wheel. But when we look at this, there is a caliper. This is the caliper. The caliper has a hydraulic piston, and there are brake pads on left and right. So when hydraulic pressure is applied to this piston, the piston will move to this side, squeezing the brake pads. And the caliper will slide to this side. That will squeeze the brake pads, and that will hold, clamp the rotor, and that is how brakes are applied. So this is a very simple principle. Irrespective of the different types, the principle of operation is the same. When hydraulic pressure is exerted, the brake pads, they tend to press onto the rotating rotor. That will decelerate your vehicle and finally bring to a complete stop. This is, in a nutshell, the principle of operation of a disc brake. Now, what are some of the things that you can check on a disc brake? Well, the first thing is regular inspection. It has to be inspected every 10,000 miles or 15,000 miles, or annually you have to inspect the condition of every disc brake on your vehicle. What are some of the checks that you can do? For if there is a wheel on this, you cannot examine clearly the condition of the rotor and the condition of the caliper, all those parts, but removing the wheel will give you access. So remove the wheel and then check the entire brake assembly. For example, look at the life left on the brake pads. Here we have the brake pads. The brake pads have friction material. There is an asbestos friction material on every brake pad. Look at the thickness of that friction material. Replace if it is excessively worn. So inspect the pad thickness. On some rotors there is a wear indicator. If that wear indicator is due, it has to be replaced. So, but generally, if it is below 3 millimeters, it has to be replaced, or 1/8 of an inch. If the thickness of this pad material, if the thickness of the friction material is less than 1/8 of an inch, then it has to be replaced. Or if the wear indicator clearly indicates that the pad is gone, then it has to be replaced. So this is the first thing you have to look at. Once you remove, check the condition of the brake pads. Then examine the rotor. Here is the rotor. This is the rotating part. We call it the rotor. Examine the rotor. There should not be deep grooves, or there should not be cracks, and there should not be some kind of surface irregularity. So it should not be warping as well. If it is warped somehow, if there are deep grooves, if there are cracks, it needs replacement. The other thing you can do is measure the thickness of the rotor. If you have a caliper, you can measure it. Measure the rotor thickness with the caliper and replace it if it is worn beyond the minimum specification. The minimum specification is sometimes stamped on the rotor itself. So check the thickness of the rotor and replace it if it is below the minimum value. And also don't forget to inspect brake lines, brake fluid, and everything. Check reservoir. So this is the first inspection that you have to do. And then in order to thoroughly inspect, proceed to cleaning the entire brake assembly. Remove the wheels and spray brake cleaner. This should be sprayed on the rotor, on the caliper, and on the brake pads in order to remove any dirt and grime accumulated on the entire assembly. You can spray it. You can then use soft brush, scrub it lightly with a soft brush to avoid hurting these brake pads. And wipe down the caliper. That is a very simple method of cleaning. Once everything is clean, then you can easily inspect the status of the components. But whenever you are cleaning, always avoid using compressed air. Don't blow this with a compressed air. This asbestos material, the lining, the brake pad lining is usually made up of asbestos that is very poisonous to a human. So if compressed air is used, that can blow harmful dust into the air, which is very dangerous for people. And also avoid oil and grease contacting the rotor and the brake pad surface as well. So these are some of the precautions that you need to take into consideration when cleaning the disc brake assembly. Then proceed to lubricating some of the very crucial sliding parts. Where to lubricate, for example? Right here we have a sliding type caliper. the caliper will be sliding on this metal surface. This needs lubrication. You can apply a high heat resistant grease. You can use silicone based brake grease in order to lubricate this. On some, there are bolts on which the caliper will slide or float. Those has to be lubricated as well. And also don't forget to lubricate back of the brake pads. That will help in order to prolong the service life. Right here, this is where the calipers are acting, and right here also this is where the piston is acting. So this, it should better be lubricated as well. And if there are caliper bushings on your brake assembly, also those need to be lubricated. And whenever you are lubricating, avoid lubricating the friction area. The friction area includes this rotor surface. This should not be lubricated. It should not be touching any kind of oil or grease. This should not be contacting any oil or grease. And the brake pads, they should not be touching the friction part. The friction side of the brake pads should not be touching any type of oil or grease. These are some of the maintenance tasks that you can do in order to prolong the service life of your brake assembly and in order to drive your vehicle safely. Now, there are common issues associated with disc brake of this kind. For example, you might be hearing brake squealing when you are applying brake, or brake squeaking. If the brake starts to squeak or squeal, that is indication of a trouble. So this could be caused by glazed brake pads due to excessive heat, or it could be caused by worn out parts, worn out shims, or it could be caused by overly worn out brake pads causing metal to metal contact. So how do we fix this? Sand the pads lightly. If there is sufficient friction material left on the brake pads, that has to be sanded lightly with 120 grit sandpaper. You can somehow remove the blazing, and you can apply brake grease on the pad shims if the friction surfaces are causing that kind of squealing. And if they are worn out, it has to be replaced. The brake pads, the brake pad assembly, it has to be replaced if it is excessively worn. The other problem that you can face on disc brake is brake pulsation. Brake pulsation is when you have rotor warpage. As you apply the brakes, that will cause some kind of pulsation on the brake pedal. So you can also feel this shaking sometimes on the steering wheel as well. This could be caused by warp rotor. If the rotors have somehow warped, that can cause some kind of wobbling when brakes are applied. Force will be exerted one time, rotor will be pushing, rotor will be running this way, running that way, this way, that way, and that will cause vibration and pulsation when brakes are applied. So if that is the case, then either the rotor needs resurfacing in order to make it straight, or if it is excessively worn out or if it is excessively warped, it has to be replaced. Uneven pad wear can also be a problem. This can cause a sticking caliper. If it is unevenly worn, that can cause a sticking caliper or sticking pin. For example, if the calipers are stick to one side, brakes is applied, and if the caliper slides this way and remains there, somehow sticking there, then this side pad will excessively wear, whereas this will remain intact. So that is also a problem. So in order to avoid that, these sliding surfaces, they need quite cleaning. Clean and lubricate the sliding pins and sliding surfaces of this kind. And if the caliper is damaged somehow, it has to be replaced. If somehow it is seized, that has to be removed as well. The other thing that you can do is by avoid harsh driving habits in order to prolong the service life of your disc brake. The best practice is to avoid riding the brake. Some drivers have a habit of keeping their feet on the brake pedal. That will cause hydraulic pressure to be exerted on this piston, forcing the brake pads to clamp onto the rotor, increasing friction, causing heat, and also somehow causing resistance to the engine as the vehicle is being driven. So avoid riding the brake, and when you apply brake, try applying brake smoothly. A smooth braking is when there is gradual contacting of the friction surfaces. But if there is sudden brake application, if there is abrupt brake application, that is also very damaging to the brake. And whenever it is possible, start downshifting first before using the brakes. Downshifting will somehow reduce the vehicle speed and reduce the work of the brake pads. Work of the brake will be reduced, and that can cause reduction in braking load. That can prolong the service life of your brake assembly as well. Avoid driving through deep water. This is very damaging to the brake. Ignoring brake fluid change is also another very dangerous thing. The hydraulic property of the brake fluid will get lost, and that can cause braking difficulty and leading to spongy brake pedal as well. And whenever you are replacing disc brake components, always make sure that you are using original parts. Locally cheap parts that they stay for a very short period, so always make sure that you are using OEM parts. After any maintenance, test the brake at low speed before regular driving to ensure proper functioning. By following these tips and following these steps, your disc brake will last longer, perform better, and keep you safe. So these are some of the things that you can do in order to prolong the service life of your disc brake assembly. Well, dear viewers, that is all we have for you in this video regarding some of the things that you can do in order to care for your disc brake assembly. If you find this video helpful and if you like what has been presented, please smash the like button. If you are new to this channel, do consider subscribing, turn on notifications so that you will be the first to get notified whenever we come up with another video. Until then, stay safe.